Okay. I think we're solid. Yeah. Um, Wait, let me fix something else. I realized yesterday that the audio is not where I want it to be. Because Discord was really quiet and my voice was very loud. And that's not very horizontal structures.
It's true.
It's very hierarchical. Now, what did Marx think about the hierarchy? Like as a
About
concept?
what hierarchy?
As a concept.
As a concept? I mean, mostly kind of neutral about it overall.
Tragic.
Uh, he believed that hierarchies formed when they needed to form, and when they didn't need to, then they didn't. You know.
We'll save our disagreements
So
for
as there
after
should
the
be
revolution.
hierarchies. Yeah, yeah, yeah. Isn't it like no unjust hierarchies though? Isn't there also like a little tiny asterisk even within the
Um,
anarchist?
True, and it's complicated, and I'm not necessarily like the most experience. Like, I'm not an expert on anarchist writing. I'm reading, but like, I have a little bit of time to get to where I would be confidently speaking on like the entirety of anarchist thought. Um,
Yeah.
but yes, like there will always be some level of stratification in society. Like, people who are abled versus people who are disabled, people who are older versus people who are younger. There will always be differences. I think this is also what Marx. Am I correct? He was also like, yeah,
Yes.
like there will always be differences.
It's he did a whole thing where he's like, I'm not advocating for equality
Yeah,
in like the normal sense because like equality in a hospital would be a bad thing because you would not be giving equal treatment to the people that need it.
yeah. Equality
You
versus
know.
equity, all that stuff.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
So yes, and then when you get into what is a justified versus unjustified hierarchy, that shit gets wacky. Like, I do think it's possible to have hierarchy. Well, you gotta define your terms. So like, sorry, I'm so tired. Hierarchy as a division of power, as in one person is at the top and there are people below them who have decreasing power as it goes down, um, is how I typically think about hierarchy. And like, there are cases where like, um, classrooms are often a hierarchical structure, and there are a lot of different ways to approach a classroom that is a little bit more equitable and has a little bit more like student guided, like curriculum. Um, but it's not necessarily like the only way that you could like. I do think there are situations in which one person in the room having like more, as much as I hate authority, more like authority over the rest. There there
Yeah.
there are cases.
Do you think do you think we should talk about on authority this episode? Do you think that should be brought up or
I think for this one, for this session, we should be doing like an intro.
okay.
Just
Yeah, intro to Marx.
just baby basics. Did everyone read the required reading? The
No, I'm sorry.
optional reading. It was not required.
Optional.
Oh wait, I completely forgot. I was like in the middle of
I
uploading.
woke up like an hour ago, so
I was in the middle of uploading a
I told my therapist this morning that. Sorry, go ahead. I told my therapist this morning that my friends and I were getting in a call to talk about Marx, and she was like, "Karl Marx? Why?"
She's so basic for
It doesn't
that.
get Yeah.
Okay.
Okay. I meant to share this
all right.
earlier and I
So,
forgot, but it's really
uh,
cute. I'll show you. It's
yeah.
an illustrated version of Capital.
I think your internet is killing you right as you began to talk.
Ah.
Grace
Uh.
Internet's always doing that.
Okay, in my
Yeah.
defense, it's not my
Ah?
internet. Can you guys hear me? Hello, hello.
Yes.
Yes.
Okay.
Maybe.
I meant to upload this
Yes.
earlier.
Yes.
I'm going to upload it now. It's a cute little illustrated version of Capital that I think Bug in particular would enjoy.
Of Das Capital?
Yes.
Das Capital? Yes. All right. So I'm gonna be looking at I'm gonna be having Wikipedia articles up for the whole stream, by the way. That's my stream strategy.
Oh, also, Ray, you need to share with anyone that has the link because it's still like access requested right now.
Ah, homophobic. Okay, one sec. Thank you for bringing that to my attention.
Yeah. So,
Whoa, that's yeah. All right, are you guys ready?
yeah,
We're
go
so
yeah.
ready.
All right. So first of all, so Marx basically was talking at a period in history that is known as 1848 because that's what year it was. The 1848 revolutions were a series of political upheavals that happened across Europe as part of the greater. You'll see it there. It's the Age of Revolutions. It's called the Age of Revolutions because it was really easy to overthrow a government at this time, and so people were doing it all over the place. So the ultimate reason why the revolutions were happening in 1848, there's just a lot of factors that went into it. There was potato blight. There was a lot of food going around at the time, just across Europe. It was in the aftermath of the old aristocracy winning against the French Revolution and the Napoleonic Wars. But ultimately, what was happening was this is the first time in history that there was like a lot of industry happening for the first time. In this sort of system, the Communist Manifesto was written. This is why Karl Marx wrote it. He was looking at a lot of the struggles that was happening here, and if you read about this period in like modern American history classes, it's going to say that these are primarily democratic, liberal revolutions. You can even see here in Wikipedia that they're going to have the uprisings were led by temporary coalitions of workers and reformers, including figures from middle and upper classes, the bourgeoisie. However, the coalitions did not hold together for long. This is because there was a lot of transitions going on. Which basically were like blacksmiths, silk weavers, tailors, cobblers. All these people were being thrown out of their industries because there was a machine now that could do all of their work and more way faster and way cheaper than they ever could. There was a thing, the Silesian weavers. Yes, the Silesian weavers. Which was a bunch of people who weaved, just getting mad
Question.
and
How do you spell
trying
that?
to fucking kill people. Yeah?
How do you spell that?
Silesian weavers, it's on screen.
Can I see your screen?
It's on the stream. Silesian space Weavers. Silesian.
Where's your
Silesia
scr-
is
Oh!
in Poland.
I was not watching your screen because I was taking notes.
Yeah.
I see.
Fake
Okay.
fan.
Yes, excuse you. You're a fake fan. You're not even taking notes.
What? I don't need to, okay?
Yeah, this also happened before the revolutions of 1848. Shortly before. and it was just one of the many social factors coming in. So this is the main thing I wanna communicate saying all of this. Okay, this is the main thing, which is that Karl Marx did not create the idea of communism. He did not create the idea of socialism. He did not create the idea of workers owning the means of production. That was already a conflict happening in Europe that he was writing about at the time. In fact, the Communist Manifesto, when he used that term, communist and communism, before then it was used primarily as a pejorative against workers and lower strata people who were advocating for their own rights. Socialist was kind of the more tame version of it, because socialism was very much associated with reformism, which we're going to talk about when I start talking a little bit about the other socialists at the time. But mostly, Karl Marx used communist because it was a pejorative for the most radical, harebrained, sort of fantastical anti-capitalist ideas that were out at the time. So yeah, that's sort of the main thing. Let's open the Communist Manifesto. I'm going to open the Communist Manifesto. Give me a second. You'll be surprised to see that I do not have it bookmarked.
I was literally about to say that. I was really be like, you don't have it bookmarked? I was like, that was bad.
I cannot believe
All
it.
right. So, I'm going to summarize
Fake Mark's head.
a lot of these. I'm going to summarize a lot of these because it's very old, and it's from the perspective of the time. I do want to quickly talk about the preface. This is from the 1872 German edition. This is very important because basically there was the Civil War in France, the address of the General Council of the International Working Men's Association. This is a very significant event. This is very important because this is the first time there ever was something that could be considered a proletarian revolution. What they called the Civil War in France was the first time that there was an actual, real workers' government. Like, literally, people that owned private property were not allowed in.
Damn.
Only wage workers in pure, full control of the government. So that was
That would be nice.
yeah. So that yeah. Don't worry, we're gonna get there. That was a very significant event because it permanently changed how basically every socialist thinker thought of socialism at the time, because it sort of went from theory to reality very quickly.
I would like to raise my hand.
Yes, please. What is it?
I have thought. Considering this, especially in the context of the way that other democracies were being, well, quote-unquote democracies, I have my own thoughts, were being founded in other places, both in Europe and in America. I guess we're, like, closer to the tail end. Well, no. We were in the 1700s, right? I don't fucking know my own history. Those were all predicated
Yes,
on owning land.
1700.
Yeah, on owning land and property, like, to be able to vote and participate in government. So, also the broader context, this shit was wacky for the time.
Yeah. This is also a thing that Marx talked about, specifically his analysis of how the United States formed into the country that it is. He describes it and also France as the first bourgeois revolutions, which is obviously different from a proletarian revolution because it's just like different stages in history, different people are being represented. But yeah, that's going to be... We don't need to talk about that quite yet. I'm just going to go back. This is an 1882 Russian edition preface. That is here because you'll notice that's before it became the Soviet Union. Because there's just a whole lot. The communists actually have a very long history in Russia before Lenin ever took power. It's a whole thing, but it's not really relevant right now. All right, so bourgeois and proletarians. This is the first chapter. It begins with the most banger line. The history of all hitherto existing society is the history of class struggles. All of these, freeman, slave, patrician, plebeian, lord and serf, guild master, and journeyman. Basically, this is just saying that throughout all of history, what actually drives change is social class. And social classes are basically defined by what your immediate economic interest is. Everybody has the same interest, you know? You need food to live. You need to have sex because you're horny. You need to have a roof over your head
True.
because if you don't, you die.
Hey, yo.
In that order, maybe something like that. But also, once you have complicated society, right? You now have economic interests. If you are, for example, a slave, right? You want to be free. You want to no longer be a slave. And your slave master, who makes a lot of money off of you being a slave, doesn't want you to be free, right? That's a class conflict. Patrician and plebeian. This is Rome, and none of you understand how Rome works, so I'm going to skip that one. But lord and serf.
Hey,
you know, the Lord
Rome was
wants
gay as
to-
fuck. I know what happened with the olive
That
oil.
is
That's
that
not
is
entirely
irrelevant.
true.
It's actually not relevant to what I'm talking about right now at all.
Maybe to you, God.
Grad student.
Lord and serf, that obviously refers to the Lord who used contracts and debt to keep certain people on his land indefinitely, and the serf who wants to go wherever there is available work as opposed to wanting to be stuck to land. Guildmaster and journeyman. This is an 1848 thing. You got to remember, during 1848, there were like modern cities. There were also just like medieval towns around. like there were still knights and shit. Like it was a wild time. But
That's
yeah,
pretty sick.
basically, guildmaster would be somebody like an arch, like super skilled old blacksmith, and a journeyman would be a new blacksmith coming up in the ranks. Right, the journeyman wants to work anywhere he wants. The guildmaster wants to restrict where that journeyman works in order to keep enough money and resources for the labor of the old guildmasters. Right. This is the basis of
Actually,
it. Yeah.
there's also
Oh, shit.
the ownership of property dynamic in that the guild masters became masters upon like owning more of the means of production. Like the journeyman had the tools of their trade, from what I recall, but also the guild master had like more of the specialized machinery and were able to utilize the work of apprentices, and there's another category of people to produce more stuff. And then at a certain point, once you gained like enough skills and proved yourself, you could take the journeyman was the next step. And then the journeyman also had their own like collectives, or I'm forgetting the name of those, the brotherhoods, they had an interesting relationship with the guild masters. A lot of guild masters were former members of brotherhoods, so sometimes they were chilling, sometimes they weren't, but there were actual like wars, like people were fighting, like these bitches were fighting.
Well, I actually would say that technically this is all wrong because guildmaster and journeyman are just I think he just put this in like to fill space, because if you actually look at what he considers to be a social class, guildmaster and journeyman would actually be the same social economic class.
I agree.
Because they actually have like the same interest if you look at it, because they just want to get the most return for their labor, right?
Mm-hmm.
And really the journeyman wants to work with a guildmaster because he gets to leverage the guildmaster's like expertise and veteranship to get more money on his own. But either way, the modern bourgeois society has sprouted from the ruins of feudal society, has not done away with class antagonisms. So modern bourgeois society is basically the changing thing. At the time, as I mentioned earlier, there were now machines that could do the work of individual artisans and journeymen and all this. And that was, to him, what changed everything. To him, he was saying that now nothing else will be the same after this, because all of the social classes, and this is gonna... He probably says it in this one, actually. But basically, what he claims is that through capitalism, there will only essentially be two social classes at the end of the day, which will be the people who own the means of production and the people who don't. The people who use other people's labor to make their product and then sell, and then the people who buy and get their wages from private owners. Um, that this would be the bourgeoisie, the owning class, who owns the means of production, and the proletariat, who work for wages given to them by the bourgeoisie, and who are in the market as buyers from other members of bourgeois society. There's also he also has a whole theory on feudalism, but obviously we're going to skip that because it's irrelevant. This is an interesting one because he says the bourgeoisie, wherever it has got the upper hand, has put an end to all feudal patriarchal idyllic relations. This is wrong, actually. This is one of those Marx was wrong moments. I'm sure you all are aware of sexism and racism and patriarchy and fucking homophobia and all of these things which really grew out of feudalism and the feudal mode of production that did not go away.
No,
And are in fact
I
still
think
here.
like the mid 1800s was actually like a great time for minorities. I think we were all children,
Yeah.
honestly.
It was great.
Yeah.
This was his claim, though. The claim, I guess, was that eventually all of these things will be thrown away, or Marx was himself sexist and racist, and he didn't actually see that as part of the things that had to go away before feudalism was really gone and capitalism had made it to the top. So yeah, which is probably he was a little bit. I mean, he was in the International Working Men's Association. You know what I'm saying? Anyways, the bourgeoisie has torn away the family. He loves the family because he's a little bit conservative in that sense. And this is sort of the thing that I was talking about earlier. The need of a constantly expanding market for its products chases the bourgeoisie over the entire surface of the globe. It must nestle everywhere, settle everywhere, establish connections everywhere. I don't know why the fuck it's spelled like this.
Question.
Yeah?
What are your thoughts on the ways in which, like, economic movement... Okay, not... God, I'm tired. Wrong words. What are your thoughts on the ways in which the economy has become a global economy in the sense that corporations are kind of transnational? Like, any major corporation at this point in time, while it may have its base or, like, its headquarters in a certain state or a certain, nation, it functionally operates on a global mass scale, which I think has... It was something that was, like... The seeds of it were obviously there at the very baby seeds of it were there at the beginning of the Industrial Revolution, but the way it looks now is completely different than I think anyone could have imagined in the 1800s. What are your thoughts on like the future implications of that and how it's going to like
Yeah, so this was not, I don't know who made this prediction. I don't think it was Marx, but the evolution of capitalism into a global super interconnected system was sort of seen by a lot of socialists and communists as like an inevitable part of there's a lot of predictions by socialists and communists that you will see sort of sound like they're becoming true now, like right now, but they seem to have thought that it was happening when they were alive, like over 100 years ago, which is sort of an interesting thing that you find because Marx described what we see now, like what we consider to be a new era where like corporations are international, they're across borders, they're in every country. He considered that to be what was happening at his time, even though that kind of was objectively not true. Although it was in the respect that like there were individual businessmen who owned a lot in like Belgium and France and Germany at the time, but it wasn't like there was a huge corporation from all across Europe or the world, right? Which is what we see now. And it's sort of it's because the bourgeoisie, what he describes as the owning class. I don't like the word bourgeoisie, by the way. That's my personal preference, but because I'm talking about Marx, I'm going to be using it. I prefer just saying capitalist or owning class. Mostly because bourgeoisie is just like
It's hard to
like
spell.
well, it's also because Marx purposefully used bourgeoisie because bourgeoisie was originally the term that the monarchists in the French Revolution used as a pejorative for the revolutionaries, which is a whole part of his historical materialism theory. But basically, yeah, I think because the capitalist class has this interest in free trade, always. There's been this thing for a long time where there's like the national interest, like it's been the tool of capitalists to distract the populace, the working class, with the national interest, which is basically like if France doesn't have enough resources, it needs to take it from another country instead of like trading or sharing or whatever, right? But the thing is, the capitalists actually don't really believe in that once you get down to it, because war is not good for trade, just overall. They don't want war, they just want to make money. And so we're in like the last time we had a huge period of peace, which was during this period of revolutions, actually, like peace as in like no declared wars between countries. It was just because every nation, every country was too scared to fight each other. And that's kind of true now with nukes, but it's also true because any one country that declares war on another one is going to have their trade hurt.
Mm-hmm.
And every country on Earth right now is primarily representing the interest of the stockholders, of the investors, of the business class, you know? So really, like, both America and China, the two people who would be like, on the opposite sides of the Cold War right now, if we were really in a Cold War, we would both have people inside of our governments who are financially hurt by that conflict,
Mm-hmm.
And that is something that was not achieved in Marx's time, but is very much true now, which is like this international sort of like a lot of us can see that, like, for example, NATO, like that treaty organization, isn't really made up of like a bunch of separate countries. It's like a block of just like it's one big civilization. America and Europe and this stuff are all just like the shared interest of this of like the global north, the imperial core,
Mm-hmm.
right? And so yeah, those are my thoughts on it, expanded a lot.
For those of you who were here yesterday too, keep this discussion in mind when you think about how Trump is proposing the 20% tariff across the board, like the impact that would have on trade and international relations. Whew. Anyways, go on.
Oh yeah, I would like to say something on that real quick. Tariffs are weird from a socialist perspective because really we should also be internationalists, right? Like we should capitalists do it naturally because they're like, yo, I'd love to do business with you, Chinese person, and you, American, and even the Russian oligarchs. Everybody has money. Everybody has money to go around. And we don't, because I own stock, so technically I'm not a proletarian. You, all of you, yeah.
Fucking
I'm
traitor.
Yeah, well, okay, I'm a traitor to my actual class. Okay, I'm a class traitor for you. I want you to win. Okay, like,
Out of the tax bracket moment, like
Can't believe you, Julian.
yeah, no, it's true. I have a little bit of the means of production. So
wow,
I'm technically petit bourgeois.
It's okay. I'm not one of the anarchists who wants us all to die. I think let's just do what we can to make things better.
Yeah. But yeah, that's also comes into the fact that pretty much every socialist revolutionary forever has thought that if there's gonna be a successful workers' revolution, it has to be like a global one,
Well, yeah.
brought about by a big global catastrophe, basically, which they all believe to be inevitable, because I don't know if you notice, but every once in a while, capitalism just kind of collapses for a little bit, you know?
Mhm.
Uh,
I also
yeah.
have a thought on that. Additionally, the ways in which capital demands like the free flow of goods and services, it also demands the free flow of labor, and that's where you get a lot of tension in the immigration conversation because capital interests depend upon being able to move across borders and maximize profits by utilizing the least compensated workers on a global scale. The areas, and particularly the global south, who have the least worker protections, least compensation, etc., etc. Um, however, uh, individual nations, individual like politicians within nations, especially in America, but also you see it a lot worse in Europe, kind of depend on being anti-immigration, while also being the ones who are most likely to serve capital interests. You see in the Republican Party, I'm forgetting the names of all the parties in Europe, but a lot of the fascist parties that are rising right now in like what was it? Germany. What was it? Well, okay. The SPD were which side? They used to be the socialist guys, but now they're the cringe guys.
Ray, Ray, we can't right now.
Okay, sorry.
That's so.
Okay.
That is relevant, but not yet. Okay.
sorry. You're getting the true
speaking-
I'm sitting in your class experience.
Okay. Speaking of which, good segue, because we're going to talk about the relation of the Communist Party to the proletariat. So back at the day, if you could imagine, Marx had this idea. He was like, what if there was a party solely to represent working class interests instead of what basically every other party was, which was some working class, some middle class, and then, you know, we get a whole bunch of money from the actual owning class, so we're really just you know, in their pocket, you know. So this was his idea. This is what the Communist Party is. The communists do not form a separate party opposed to the other working class parties. We'll save that for later. That'll be this will become very important. This will become very important. This will become so important later. They have no interests separate and apart from those of the proletariat as a whole. I don't regard that as less important, but that is the idea, right? The party is supposed to be solely of working class people, solely for working class people, solely to represent them. They do not set up any sectarian principles of their own by which to shape and mold the proletarian movement. This is all aged like milk shit right here. Like this all was not achieved partially because of Marx, a little bit. If I gotta be honest,
What? You mean
Marx a little bit was too keen on his ideas. We're gonna talk about the critique of the Gotha program eventually, but that's kind of what it was.
You mean the communists like aren't like the most cohesive in agreement party in the world?
Well, they agree with themselves. They like doing that. Other far left parties? No. Yeah.
Huh.
So, the national struggles of the proletarians in different countries, they point out and bring out to the front the common interests of the entire proletariat, independently of all nationality. That is that probably the Communist Party has been sticking, like any Communist Party. There's no the Communist Party anymore. They splintered and fractured into a billion ones. If you go to any Communist Party in your local city, you will find 3, and they all fucking hate each other and want to shoot each other in the back of the head.
It makes research so difficult because they all have the exact same name too. They all have the exact same names.
Yeah. The Workers' Revolutionary Radical Party of
all
America.
of them. They're all the same.
So yeah, this is basically saying what they want to do is they want to abolish private property. That's the goal of the Communist Party. That's the primary thing they want to do, because private property is the thing that stands in the way of the workers owning the means of production. Like that the legal existence of private property. Let's be clear though. Let's be clear with Yeah.
Sorry. Would you like to make a distinction between private and personal property for those who may not be aware?
You were 1 second off. I begun the sentence where I was doing that.
Sorry,
All
I'll
right.
stop
So yeah.
interrupting.
So yeah, private property is property for the purposes of profit, right? You don't buy a factory because you want to live in a factory, you know? You don't buy a plane. So okay, well actually a plane is kind of different. Factory, shop, whatever it is. There's a difference between the things you own for profit and the things you own because you want to use it, right? It's blurry in the modern day because obviously in capitalism you have to sell your labor. So a guitar, a car, is that private or is that personal property? It's kind of hard to tell. But basically, you are allowed to have property.
I gotta
You are
go,
allowed
but
to
I'll be
own.
back.
Okay. Goodbye. So yeah, personal property, your toothbrush, your house, your bed, things you use which are not made for profit. But yeah, private property is the factories, the things, ultimately the things which, all the things that make the commodities that we rely on today are at the moment private property, as opposed to socially owned or collectively owned property, which is what communism seeks to establish. I'm gonna skim through this. This is it right here.
I, for one, do vote for the people's toothbrush.
That is gross, and I am not.
I don't have any Halloween candy, so everyone gets one brush from the toothbrush.
What?
From each according to their means. To each.
This isn't being said here, but he sort of one big point about Marx is that he sort of thought that all of the ideas of liberalism were just bullshit. Like, he doesn't think that freedom of speech, freedom of movement, freedom of trade, all this stuff was actually like materially like beneficial to anybody. Like, he doesn't think that so the communist critique of human rights is something that Marx kind of pushed forward. Basically, the claim is anything that the government, the state, the thing that has the monopoly on violence and sets all of the laws, anything that it says you have the right to, isn't things that it wants you to protect against the state. It's things that you want. It's things that the state wants you to do to advance its motivations. So freedom of speech, freedom of private property, that's because it wants you to go out and be in the market. It wants you to sell yourself to whoever you want, wherever you want, because ultimately you're going to be selling to the same people, right? You can go to one different market or shop or factory. You're all going to be selling yourself to an owner of the means of production. It's going to be a capitalist because that's what the whole system is sort of based on. And as well, he thinks that the universal suffrage, everybody voting in elections, is really just because obviously political parties take money from like rich people, right? That's the only way they operate. That's how they work. While the working class doesn't have the resources to do that because the working class is spending their wages on food and rent and whatever other luxury commodities they have at the moment, and they're never going to have enough money to just be like, yeah, I'll give 20% of my income, or like however much money is needed to sway votes in this election, right? And so that's sort of the main criticism against liberalism, that it's just sort of all a facade to facilitate the private ownership of means of production and keep the worker from it. And if anything, just make it so that a worker that is successful becomes a capitalist, and if a capitalist is unsuccessful, becomes a worker. But it's okay because everybody's fair and free and equal. Yeah. He goes on more about the family. I think the demands are in here. Yeah. So this is the first set of demands ever. This is important because Marx. It hadn't happened yet, right? The Paris Commune thing had not yet occurred. So this is what he thought was the closest, quickest way to achieve the means of communism. Abolition of property in land and application of all rents of land to public purposes. I don't know what the fuck that means. I assume that's like a mistranslated gobbledygook. I don't know what. Like I just don't know. A heavy progressive tax or graduated income tax. That's pretty self-explanatory. He just, heavy taxation, abolition of all rights of inheritance, confiscation of the property of all immigrants and rebels. This is because he's saying like they're gonna run, they're gonna flee. It's like once the proletarians take over, the capitalists are gonna try and leave, and when they leave, we should just take their shit. That's basically all he's saying.
Yeah.
Centralization of credit in the hands of the state by means of a national bank with state capital and an exclusive monopoly. Centralization of the means of communication and transport in the hands of the state. Extension of factories and instruments of production owned by the state. The bringing into cultivation of wastelands and the improvement of the soil generally in accordance with a common plan. He says improvement of the soil because everybody was starving at the time. That's just virtue signaling. He doesn't give a fuck about soil. You never hear him talk about soil.
Yeah. Who was the person who thought that value came from soil? There was one of the early thinkers.
That might be Lassalle. Well, that might be a thing that Marx said about Lassalle to make fun of him, more specifically.
Yeah, that was more because of a critique of it because
Marx is a little bit bratty.
He was. He was a messy bitch, as we all know. That was something that we talked about a little bit in class because we went over these initial demands or, I guess, goals. And we had people like in class like who would support which one, and we had little discussions afterwards, and that was one where we had a really interesting discussion. Well, okay. I had a really interesting discussion with the professor. I don't know what the fuck was happening with everyone else. I would like to learn more about that.
We're gonna get to it when we get to the critique of the Gotha program. But this is gonna be the last one. So this is one thing I have to be specific, or I want to call attention to. He doesn't like socialists. I know it's weird now because, look, straight up the words have changed. Okay, things mean different things now than it did at his time. At the time, there was a thing called the social question, which was what do we do about all these workers who are poor, right? And anybody who wanted to solve that problem by just like giving money to or supporting policies of those poor workers were called socialists. And so socialism was a broad, huge ideology. And that's why he called himself a communist. So we have reactionary socialism, feudal socialism. That's basically like aristocrats saying they're socialists, trying to make workers back into peasants, when that wouldn't actually be better, of course. Petit bourgeois socialism. Look out for this with me, okay?
I see.
'Cause I'm petty bourgeois.
Horizon.
All right, I own stocks. Yeah. This is basically your Bernie Sanders. This is your AOC. Your Labour Party in Britain. This is like they'll never go far enough to abolish capitalism, but they'll give you like they'll give you some stuff. This is not relevant anymore. This is literally him just talking shit about other people. I don't even remember what is his main grievance.
Like a lot of Marx's writings are just like this bitch sucks, like.
It's so true. It's so true.
Also, question.
Wow.
Something that's evolved a lot in like, okay, I don't want to get too far ahead again, so it's totally fine if I
Okay.
am. Um, you have read more modern Marxist thinkers, right?
Yes, I
the
have.
the modern relationship between like who counts as the proletariat and who counts as the bourgeois, um
Oh my God.
beyond like who owns means of production and who, like, because now the distinctions between economic classes in the modern age is no longer like factory owners and day laborers or factory workers. It's like a lot more flexible and complicated. Any thoughts or feelings on that that can be quickly summarized, or should we save that?
I'll just real quick. I'll just real quick. This is the brainworms of capitalism infecting the Marxist movement. Okay, this is a lie. All right, you can like, yeah, some people, like, oh, some workers own a little bit of stock, so that means they're actually capitalists, or like, oh, managers are in there, they're like a labor aristocracy. No, okay, like the actual, like, you can still see, there's still a lot of working class. Okay, put it simply, okay, because obviously I have a lot of thoughts. I'm trying to say quickly, okay. Whether or not the capitalist class has evolved into this crazy, ununderstandable mechanism of stocks and investments and markets and fucking cryptocurrency and Bitcoin and all this shit, right? Whether or not that's true, the working class is still the working class.
True.
Like, they're like, the ultimate distinction is still there are people who own the means of production and who have interests in keeping that, and there are people that don't. There are people that work for a wage. The fundamental difference that marks, because you are right, there are a lot of differences in material conditions that largely have made organizing for labor worse, because it used to be that within given factories, a lot of workers would be very close and tight to each other, and they'd all go in the same break rooms, and they'd see like the capitalist boss up in the office, like, distant and lording over them, right? This is a lot of stuff that made it easy to organize and easy to see what the problem is. And now we have like this vast, complicated hierarchy, and a whole lot of other factors, but the basics are the same. The what socialism might be in the future will be a lot different to what we saw in, say, the Paris Commune, but ultimately it's still the same. The classes are still there. It's still owner and non-owner, bourgeoisie and proletarian. I thought what you were talking about for a minute was a Maoist third world theory. uh, which,
Not yet, not yet. We'll get there.
which is significant because it considers the proletarian working class of anybody in Europe or America as petty bourgeois, and therefore impossible to attain socialism whatsoever. Um,
Yes, I have
ironic,
my critiques.
yeah. I'm just gonna say it's ironic considering how socialist Mao's country is, haha. But whatever. Um, anyways, this is the last point here. I skipped conservative socialism because this is just people that are lying. That's basically all conservative and bourgeois socialists are at the end of the day. But critical utopian socialism and communism is a difference that he talks about a lot, which is actually very important to Marxist thinking. So Marx was sort of the first person who got really into this idea of historical materialism, which is it's sort of like you'll have to flip your understanding of history if you're still like used to the U.S. sort of conception of history, which is the liberal version of events that he criticizes. Basically, idealism is the sort of mode of thinking where philosophical frameworks that people have guide history and guide developments. But Marx basically says ideas form around material circumstance. This so for example, you may have heard about this in your high school, in your U.S. high schools. The French Revolution and American revolutions happened because of the Enlightenment, which is where there were a bunch of people who came up with the ideas of freedom and separate bodies of government and social contract, social contract, and all of this stuff. And then there were revolutions to put those ideas in place. Marx would say that an increase in trade, the power of the merchant class at the time, produced ideas to protect private property that eventually became the bourgeoisie that rebelled and revolted and put in place the United States and other liberal democratic republics across Europe. So that would be the main difference. And what he's critiquing here is basically socialists that think a lot of democratic socialists. So that would mean socialists who want to implement socialism through the state, through the existing state apparatus, and also utopian socialists, which were at the time people that just bought communes out in the wilderness somewhere, and their idea of achieving communism was just sort of waiting for more and more people to keep making their own independent communes until eventually there was just communism. Which is also, by the way, how the original term communism came about. And he criticized both of them because he was like, none of that's going to work because, capitalism is in control of the state. Capitalism is the dominant structure. You cannot avoid it. You cannot work through it. You can only destroy it, right? So that is basically, there's probably something else. Yeah. This is the last chapter of the Communist Manifesto. It's very funny because he's like, yeah, here are other parties that the Communist Manifesto agrees with, and he got like 4. He doesn't even say a party here. He's just like, yeah, there are people, there are definitely that in Germany. But yeah, working men of all countries unite. That is the basics of the Communist Manifesto. That is the first time that anybody got a view on Marx across the board. We are now going to go into... Wait, actually, let me check the chronology of this. Hold on. Of the Gotha program. 1875.
You want to know what's funny? The Wikipedia entry for the critique of the Gotha program is longer than the Wikipedia entry for the Gotha program. I remember I was researching this a couple years back, and I...
That is very funny. We're going to talk about the Paris Commune first.
Okay, wait, question.
Yeah?
How long will this be going for? Because I do have homework after this, and how long does everyone else have free?
I have no idea. I had no plans. However long you want me to do this.
Because we could split this up into multiple sessions, like maybe moving forward, if you do have Wednesday nights free, we can have Wednesday nights be Marxism nights, and we can go bit by bit.
Maybe.
Because I also don't want to miss, because I'm probably going to try to leave by like maybe 8 or 8:30 would be my cutoff. I may or may not have a huge project due tonight. Let's not worry about that.
Damn.
And I am taking notes I'm going to put in there, and I'm also recording this for Bug and others. So unless someone else would like to take over notes and recording, we could bookmark the next section for next week.
Yeah, I don't really know how to record, so
I don't know either. If you download OBS, it has an option, and I just click that button, and that's all I do.
Ray, I don't think any of us want to download IBS. I mean, OBS.
You already have it downloaded, Felix.
Yeah.
Yeah, for real.
I'm pretty sure all of us are lactose intolerant.
I have it, okay? I
Okay.
can record.
Okay.
Maybe.
Of course you do.
Does someone else want to
Of
take
course.
notes? I can share the Google Doc that I'm taking notes on. They're like very loose
I'm
notes.
doing homework right now.
I gave up taking notes in school, so yeah.
Get Adderall. Get that Adderall.
I'm trying. Okay,
changes
speaking of
everything.
that,
Okay.
I'm trying. But what's funny though is today my therapist told me that that the psychiatrist that's gonna evaluate me will be calling me next week, and her name is also Sarah, and she's also Middle Eastern. So it's very silly. And my friend Izzy was saying that she's just gonna like change hats and just be the same person. But yeah, anywho, we'll see how it goes. I think it'll be cool. I'm hoping it'll just be a one and done deal, but we'll see. Anywho,
If you're willing to go to 8:30, I can bump out everything that happened in the Paris Commune within that time.
Ooh, the Paris. Okay. Let's see. Okay. A lot did
Alright,
happen
yeah.
during the Paris Commune. That is a hefty one.
Yeah, 8:30. That's like 40 minutes. I went through the Communist Manifesto in 50.
True, and there are points that like I think we don't judge my notes too bad. These were mainly. I'm going to have to rewrite them before they're useful to other people.
No, I'm gonna publish your notes.
No, that's just like what happened to Marx.
Mwahaha!
All right. So some background. Oh, I'm gonna have to go back to this actually eventually. But this is the International Working Men's Association. This is this is the one. Yeah. So Marx was in here. So was a fella named LaSalle, who we'll talk about later, who was put on blast for the Gotha program. And Bakunin, who is like the father of the anarchist movements. They were all in here because they're all, labor-oriented folk who like the idea of social, non-private ownership of the means of production. So, while they were writing all this stuff, Germany invaded France.
whoa.
Yeah. Technically, it was Prussia at the time, and they beat France so hard that they became Germany in the process of invading France. It's a complicated scenario, but basically, they invaded France. They seized most of northern France, and they laid siege to Paris. But they allowed food to go into Paris still. So what happened was Paris was a completely isolated city from the rest of France. And then the workers overthrew the government for the first time ever. Let's see. Let's look at the exact prelude. Oh yeah, Paris was famously like always the most radical city on the European continent. I don't know if you know this. They're so radical that they'll routinely overthrow the government within French history to have a national election, and then after they do that, everybody else in France like will vote the monarchy back into power.
It happens so
This
many
was the
times.
thing that
It's like,
happened. Yeah.
come on, guys, are you
And
doing this
Paris
on purpose?
Yeah, Paris kept going like, what the fuck? So they got tired of this, and this is what happened. So the German army surrounded Paris. In response, when they surrendered, the working class was like angry for various reasons, and then they overthrew. When did they exactly overthrow? Yeah, so they had their own little dis with the government. Honestly, I don't even know the prelude. I just kind of pay attention to what happened and when the workers were actually in control. What happened basically was that there was a mass strike across the country. They took it over, and then they were just like, "Yo, what do we do?" To let you know, over like what their government was like. Essentially, across Paris, there were factories, and everybody who worked in the factory got together, like on the factory floor, and they elected from among themselves a manager and a delegate. The manager was basically a manager, obviously, but like an appointed like leader person who does whatever powers they choose to grant to the manager, and the delegate went to the actual Paris Commune, which is what this event is named after, where they met and assembled and made decisions for the entire city. The Commune, or the delegates and managers, the main difference that differentiates them from like a liberal democracy, the standard ones we have now, is that there's no routine elections because they stay in power until the people there choose to recall them. That was the main difference, that they just could choose to recall their delegates and managers at any moment for any reason.
I would like to add, not to be too Malatesta, but I know that private ownership during this time period was still being respected, and that was complicated. And I don't understand that as much as I would like to.
Yeah, I can explain that because so yeah, if you look at what people say about this event, you'll see that they're not trying to do like a communist revolution. That's like the first thing that people will point out. Regardless, it's sort of like what they talk about when they talk about a successful like workers' revolts, I guess. And the reason for that is because this just sort of happened, right? This is a thing that was brought about by the conditions they found themselves in, because there was no functioning government in Paris, and the workers were the only ones there willing to organize to do anything. So they were just in power. Private property was not respected in the regards that they did whatever the hell they wanted to do with the factories, because one of the issues and the reasons why they did this is because they weren't getting paid for any work they did in the factories. But all the stuff was still around, right? Like there was still farmland, there were still machines, they still had the resources to make stuff. They just weren't getting paid by the owners because the owners were gone. So they just decided to do everything themselves, thus creating. But they did respect private property in the respect that they did not seize the bank. Actually, if we go back to the Communist Manifesto real quick, there is something in the preface. I actually don't know if it's in here. Basically, Marx and Engels, in the aftermath of the Paris Commune, wrote all their criticisms of the Paris Commune, and one of the things they said was that they should have instantly seized the National Bank instead of leaving it there. And that's sort of like the degree to which their private property was respected, because they were like, I don't know, is like they as workers are like, yeah, we're kind of taking control of things now, but I guess the money in the bank isn't ours, so I guess we would be stealing, because from their perspective, you got to understand, they're not stealing anything. They're not doing anything like that. They're just operating the factories as they need to, while the capitalists are like off doing whatever. So there are a lot of events that happen in the Paris Commune. Council elections. Ooh. As I actually hadn't read this part yet, but yeah. This is sort of like how it like everybody was electing shit to their government. It was they did do a lot of like, I guess, radical things. They got rid of the death penalty, as it says there. They sort of abolished like the military in exchange for a big militia that they were doing, where all the deputies, the leaders of the militia, also had instant recall, which is obviously not how most militaries work now. This is a very hierarchical structure. there was also a very large contingent of both a Marxist, which at the time just called itself communist, and an anarchist faction. They occupied basically what was the left of like the sort of commune. There's not all the information on Wikipedia because a lot of the look, there was a meeting of the International Working Men's Association when this shit was happening in Paris. Okay, like, this was an event. They were watching this and they were sending people. They were excited. They were hyped for this. And there were a lot of reasons to, just because of all this radical stuff. But it also is important to remember that because of the fact that this was driven by pure material conditions and sort of not by an ideological fervor that you might see in other revolutions, it didn't, ideologically, it wasn't very socialist. It was definitely like it definitely was, in the respect that it was a government which was purely in place and represented by the working class, but they didn't know what to do, really. They didn't know what to do with this power they had, and so they sort of kept a lot of things in place during the time. They weren't in agreement, basically, that this is like the time for a revolution, or if this is like a momentary sort of emergency council that they were doing. Although it was becoming very revolutionary by the end, as you might imagine, because at first they were trying to do it in support of the French government, and then the French government, because the French government was meeting in Versailles, which is like off to the west of Paris, I guess. So they were over there meeting while the Paris Commune was doing everything, and eventually the people within the Paris Commune started to resent the Versailles government because they were like, yo, we're giving you the opportunity to like fight back against the Germans or like all the things they wanted. We're trying to work with you. And then Thiers, which was their guy, the mayor of Paris, or I think the prime minister of France, either way, he was a guy in the government that they thought was on their side, ended up betraying them, and so they started getting very revolutionary by the end, which is what happened. The war with the national government. They tried to march on Versailles, or I think this is wrong. I could have sworn that hold on. Yeah, that's right. They had decided to march on Versailles very late, but by the time they had decided to do that, the national government had already made the preparations to crush the Paris Commune. So they went in and they crushed the Paris Commune, and they executed a whole lot of the socialists and anarchists and Marxists that happened. This is also the radicalization. A lot of the stuff that this is interesting because Lenin would also do this specifically. But anyways, they were radical by the end. They were overthrown, and then Marx sort of changed a lot of his ideas around it. One idea that I hadn't talked about. This is sort of why I bring up the Paris Commune. We're going back to Marx specifically, okay? This wasn't actually all about the Paris Commune. I lied. We're going back to Marx. It isn't here. What is his... It has to be in here. It has to be in this. No. Okay. I don't know if it's in there. One of Marx's biggest ideas, the biggest idea that he put forward to the socialist movement, was the idea of the dictatorship of the proletariat. The dictatorship of the proletariat is pretty much exactly what I've been talking about, which is the idea of a government, a state, which is purely controlled by working class individuals. The idea of councils, where the factory themselves would elect delegates and representatives to a higher council that sort of coordinates above that. That is sort of the basis of most socialist ideologies. At the time, I guess, because it's a direct line between anybody who's doing work in the factories and the government without having political parties in the way to organize any political action. So the bourgeoisie can't just like create a party in order to sort of muddy the waters, because it's not being done as a standard election. They're not going to a polling place and then picking one representative who's voluntarily being a representative for like a certain position. It's all like directly from the bottom to the top. But if you'll notice, that actually wasn't how he described it here. He was very much very much for the idea of like the Communist Party basically becoming the state directly, which he was super in favor of for a long time. And it was something that Bakunin, who is the anarchist that I talked about earlier, he really didn't like that. He really did not like Marx's idea of seizing the state and creating a dictatorship of the proletariat. To be clear, dictatorship doesn't mean dictator in the same sense it does now. It doesn't mean like one person in charge ruling forever, doing whatever the hell they want. For him, and at the time, it sort of meant like the things that the government or state is allowed to do during like an emergency or time of crisis, which is what that sort of concept was all the way back in the Roman Empire, which is sort of relevant. But basically, he was just saying when the workers get in power, they need to have a strong state controlled by the Communist Party, because the Communist Party is the only party that represents the working class. And then through that, it would implement all of these policies that are highlighted there. And then, I guess, sort of just give up power.
From my understanding, I would like to run this by you, because
Yeah.
I would like to learn more. But from my understanding, the core disagreement between Bakunin and Marx was that was partially about the methods by which change would occur, like whether you should use a working class party or whether it should be like Marx was more on the developing a party to represent the interests of the working class, whereas Bakunin was more, if I recall correctly, like spontaneous, like just autonomous action done by workers, like bit by bit. And then the other disagreement was about whether or not the state would like disappear over time under the conditions of like worker ownership.
Yes, the second one definitely. The first one, a little bit unclear. I'm not entirely sure about that. I was mostly referring to this quote that Bakunin has, where he's like, if you give any communist party the kind of power that Marx is talking about, they would be just as dictatorial as the Tsar.
Yeah, it was about like centralization and like all that.
Yeah, but also he was spitting facts. He was right. He did sort of call that. But yeah. But yeah, then the Paris Commune happened. And he sort of changed his mind, you know? He was like, wow, look at all these delegates instantly being recalled. Look at this people's militia. Recallable. He fucking loved the Paris Commune. Which is crazy, because because before the Paris Commune actually happened, he would have thought it's stupid, right? It's kind of weird. Eventually they sort of end up agreeing, but they never reconciled about it. A very weird thing. Even though Bakunin probably still wouldn't he probably still wouldn't like exactly how the Paris Commune worked, just because it was still very
Like they still had,
very city focused.
yeah.
Yeah.
I think from my understanding, like they were still replicating a lot of the structures that Bakunin found like objectionable.
Oh yeah, definitely. They also still had they didn't really have like gender equality or anything, or at least they didn't try to, because that sort of cultural stuff wasn't really gone from the working class just yet. So yeah, dictatorship of the proletariat. That's kind of the thing I wanted to focus. That's why I talked about the Paris Commune before I talked about it, because the rhetoric around the dictatorship of the proletariat has both been used to be as like a foundational argument against communism, because like, well, it needs a dictatorship, so why would you? And it's also the thing which has justified the most, because Lenin was like, I could be a dictator of the proletariat, right? And stuff.
Yeah, it's in the name.
Yeah, I could be fuck yeah. So yeah, it's like a big complicated thing. I think now we would probably just call it like a workers' republic. Like that's sort of the closest thing that we would have in terms of language to what he actually meant by dictatorship of the proletariat. But yeah, I think I'm done. I think I'm done for now. I think that was the end.
Wait, to clarify, because
Yeah.
so the Paris Commune shifted Marx's perspective from what to what? Like,
From a very centralized state authority, typical of what you would think of when you think of dictatorship or state apparatus, to I don't even know what you would like. Basically, what the Paris Commune was, like instantly recallable delegates. I think specifically he said that the instruments of the state must be smashed and done away with, rather than co-opted by the proletariat. Like they have to be dissolved, as the Paris Commune was doing, by their dissolution of police and the army and regular property relations, instead of like what he was originally kind of thinking of, which was to just have a communist army and communist police and communist state and, you know, all that.
which is what actually ended up happening in many cases. Like we haven't gotten there yet, but
we haven't gotten there yet. I don't want to talk too much shit about the Soviet Union before we actually talk about the Soviet Union. Okay.
Yeah. I'll keep it in my pants for now.
Yeah. We still there's even another we have to talk about the fucking Kautsky era as well.
There's a lot of ground to cover. Would this be too much work to make like a short list of like the topics that you'd like to cover, and maybe like a rudimentary schedule for like what days you'll be able to cover them? If that would be too much. Okay, no worries. If it wouldn't be too much, then like feel free to, because maybe then for people who aren't able to attend certain sessions, they can like check in, or if there's one that looks really interesting, they can be like, oh, I'm gonna set aside time that day.
Yeah, I definitely want to go over the critique of the Gotha program.
Mm-hmm.
That'd definitely be fun.
I think Faye would be interested in that as a resident of Gotham, which is actually the exact same place.
Yeah, that was why he was. Yeah, it's all about how much he, like, Batman is a member of the capitalist class.
Yeah, it's actually really interesting stuff.
What?
Hero.
What is going on?
This is what happens when you don't take notes, Faye.
Just to get my attention. Shut the hell up.
No,
Okay.
You know what? I'm gonna put a class analysis of Joker in the required reading.
We got like really sidetracked talking about the King Ball.
Yeah, it's true.
I'm looking at his post right now. He's also like, Claudia Velasquez is also worth like $10 million. He should make like a $10 million trade.
No, why'd you close the stream? Thought you were showing us something.
No,
it's going in the required reading. We're gonna discuss it next week.
Yeah.
And if you don't,
long video.
if you don't have like a 500-word response by next week, you get dropped.
Okay, then I guess I'm getting dropped because I don't have time for that.
Oh, that's not an option. You're stuck. Sorry. I mean, like, you're physically going to be dropped from a building.
Oh, okay.
This is videos like this, by the way, are why I'm even interested in this at all. I love this shit. You see this? A class analysis of at the Dark Knight. This is a fucking awesome video.
Ooh, where is this?
This is a required
Oh.
rating. Okay.
Oh,
I love this video.
How long? How is? Don't tell me it's fucking 8 hours. Hold on.
It's 40 minutes.
That
a long
sounds like a
time.
dream. This is why I need
I'm not
the. Where
exaggerating,
was
by the
it?
way. Julian just watched 8 hour fucking video essays, and I think even longer too. Haven't you ever watched like a 14 hour one before?
I've
there was
not
like a
broken
20-hour one, like Victorious, wasn't there?
I've watched the 12-hour ones.
well, let's see what Quentin Reviews has done. What's Quentin Reviews the longest? I didn't watch the one with
like
Dad.
It's probably their Victorious series.
Where was that meme that you said? I need the Bakunin. Oh, right there.
You need the
I
you need
need
the
the
Bakunin.
I need the Bakunin video essays, please.
It's so funny. That's my favorite meme from like the greater leftist like space. Just
Yeah.
overall. I think
For-
that's
for
so
the-
fucking funny, dude.
Beautiful, perfect.
I love it so much.
Um,
Mark's finally responding.
is that how I should structure my like discussions moving forward? Like reading historical texts, but like framed with clickbait titles.
Yes,
Yeah.
I'm going to do it. I'm afraid.
Marx is threatening to write slurs now, by the way. It's a thing that happened. That is.
Wait, Julian, you have your
telling me
mission
he
ahead
didn't
of you.
just do it?
You have your charge. You can make all of these videos happen. It's upon
very
you.
true.
Or does it have to be me? Because the well, I think you can speak on behalf of Bakunin. I think he'd be fine with that.
I'm not actually like Aryan Marxist. I'm like a pan-socialist kind of dude.
Yeah, I call myself an anarchist, but I'm very flexible with. I just want things to get better, and I want things to get done. And what I imagine my ideal, like the ideal society will be, is not something that will ever be achieved in my lifetime. So I'm just taking the steps I need to take for things to be less bad.
I just thought that Marx's historical materialism concept was like the most, like it made the most sense to me.
He did pop off.
Out of, like-
he did pop off with
Yeah.
historical materialism. That is something that I ascribe to. Like
He
that,
really,
that
yeah,
as
he
like
really did with.
as a sociologist, like that's a cornerstone. Like to be able to apply that
Yeah.
in your analysis.
Yeah,
So
yeah.
basically everything, like understanding the actual concrete material like forces at play around things like race and gender, like the development of gender, like as a component of broader historical forces and not just like an innate drive of humans to. I have complicated thoughts on that.
Yeah.
Well, I'll shelf that for another session.
I mean, the basic thing that I guess because I would not call myself a Marxist is the thing.
Says Mark's head.
I know I am a Marx head, but I'm not a Marxist. Just because of like the. I mean, I guess you could call me an orthodox Marxist if like you really wanted to get like really fucking down in like the different that exist for all the like ideological subgroups of like the left, right? Although technically I would be a left communist as well, because I don't like the Soviet Union, but I do like the Paris Commune. Either way,
I was about to say you're just a faggot, but I remembered that you're not just a faggot. You're actually more than that.
wow, that's beautiful.
No, I meant the fact like bisexual. Like I guess you can call a bisexual person a faggot. I've done that. Yeah, you're a faggot.
That's just like
You've called me one all the time, so like I don't
Okay,
know
but
why you're questioning
I
that.
would call you a faggot regardless. Your bisexuality has
I mean,
nothing to
that's
do with it.
all.
we're all more than our sexuality. You know, we're all very multifaceted.
Maybe you are. This is all I got going for me.
But yeah, I just think that Marx had. I think his analysis of capitalism, what I do understand of it in Das Kapital, was pretty banger. I'm iffy on the labor theory of value. I just like.
Ooh. Sorry.
Yeah.
Sorry to interrupt. Talk, and I have thought.
I was gonna say that like a lot of what Marx like his analysis of previous economic systems, like I think his definition of feudalism is the most consistent definition of feudalism like across the historiographical space. I think his definition of capital concise one that like because a lot of people now would just be like capitalism means free market or whatever, like the more free market the more capitalist it is, right? But like that's not enough, I guess. So that was like that stuff has been interesting. That's ultimately why I read, and also like the difference between like he was just spitting facts in the Communist Manifesto.
Sure.
Like he was just spitting is really it.
I would love
so yeah.
to bookmark a session in the future to discuss the how am I forgetting the name? Um the generation of money, like there's a name for it, like the
Generational wealth?
the general formula.
Oh my god.
That versus and like because I've Marx has come up in multiple of my courses over the last several semesters, including the current one, which is on Marx. But one of the interesting one was on the sociology of economics, and there were several other authors and writers who are foundational thinkers in the space of economic theory, specifically sociological economic theory, but Marx is a main one, and I think one of the relevant ones that I would love to analyze in a modern context is fictitious capital and the generation of like interest, especially when you consider it like in the context of the 2008 financial crash.
Oh man, it's so interesting.
I know.
Ha- it's
We
so
should talk
interesting
about
how
it.
our economy is developed to be entirely reliant on debt.
That's a whole other thing. Like, I don't think the most okay. I'm not saying that. Okay, we don't have the best education system in the world, but our failure to educate people on financial matters and economics is, I think, one of the main. Yeah, I think that's one thing that I would like to see change among many other things in education that I want to see change, because the majority of people, from my understanding, think of debt as a bad thing, or think of like when they get like they're okay. Complicated thoughts. I have to get going. Debt as a form of capital, as something that can be exchanged and used to back like promises, and the way that has evolved over time is a very complicated and very interesting topic. But it's also, I think money is dumb. I think
Yeah,
it's all dumb. It's all so stupid and made up, and yet it means so fucking much. Like,
I mean, it's basically just gotten to a point where like now we live in a constant state of chaos, where like most money is fake, and if one guy in the chain dies and croaks, we might be on the verge of fucking total financial collapse, right?
yeah,
That's awesome.
that phrase that was coined, the rugged individualism for the masses, socialism for the rich. I think about that a lot because it's like, yeah, that's our entire financial system right now. That's all it is.
Okay, I'm very bothered by that though because that is just what capitalism is.
Yes, true, but the idea that like when applied to the
Yo.
stock market, the amount of people who buy into the stock market and like pay attention to it and like get excited over it versus the amount of people who actually benefit from it is, there's a massive disparity there. Like when things change in the like financial sector of the economy, by that I mean like the fictitious capital side of things, like the speculative investment type shit, um, it has such a disproportionate impact on our economy, and yet the benefits, the obviously yes, it's fundamental to capital that like the profit that you get does not equally go to those who produce the profit, etc., etc. But when it comes to like investment capital, like okay, like I said, I would like this to be a future session.
Yeah. Speaking of which, I'm gonna head out now. So.
Okay, farewell.
Okay.
Love
Alright.
y'all.
I think
Mean.
Thank you so much for
Bye,
yapping.
I
I'm
guess.
sorry for
No
interrupting.
problem. You guys are good. Yeah.
Yes.
There's other people in this room. I had to tell them they were good because they saw me talking and they assumed that like it was a problem.
Yes, it's a problem.
Ugh, okay, whatever.
This can't keep happening. You need to rein it
All
in.
right. Thank you, my students. We will remember that the social revolution is a notable consequence of the crises of capitalism. All we need to do is wait. Goodbye.
See.
Bye.
Bye.
Love you guys. Hope everything's going well.
Bye.
No.